Inshallah, tonight, the Arabic concept is one word often referred to as Irtiqa. And Irtiqa is a process of elevation where you elevate your soul and your spirit so that, inshallah, it would be closer to the one and only, your maker and mine, the one we come from and the one who we will return to. And in fact, the one and only truth and reality in our existence. Because as much as we imagine it to be otherwise, everything but Allah is temporal and is a mirage. Its reality is temporary and dependent and ultimately unreliable. So, you're not here for an intense scholarly lecture on schools of thought and what different scholars said about the issue of irtiqa, spiritual elevation. Rather, I will personalize much of what I say, because all of us, if there is one necessary element for our spiritual elevation, for our enlightenment, so we can see the truth of what Allah is, and you cannot see the truth of what Allah is and what Allah wants unless you see your own truth and your own limitations. And that cannot be achieved unless you testify with a great deal of humility. Great deal of humility. And so the most truthful testimony I can share with you is a personalized one, is one that shares with you my own personal experiences and the way that I have chosen to take that journey for whatever it's worth. That might be the journey that you walk, and it might be different. For as much as Allah has made us, Allah has also made us very unique and very individual. Karraman Allah, Allah has dignified us and elevated us by the fact that none of us do not have a book, individual and specific to us, to each one of us, to every human being on the face of this earth that ever was and ever will be. And so, if our accountability is personal and individual, your journey to Allah is also personal and individual. So first, we start with something that Allah reminds us of that is very essential and very basic. وَمَنْ يَعْشَ عَنْ ذِكْرِ الرَّحْمَنِ نُقَيِّدْ لَهُ شَيْطَانًا فَهُوَ لَهُ قَرِينٌ. Allah tells us very clearly in the Quran that whoever among us turns away from dhikr, and what is dhikr? Dhikr is the basic remembrance of Allah. Allah tells us in the most clear fashion, فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ وَاشْكُرُوا لِي وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ. Allah tells us in the most direct fashion, remember me, اذْكُرُونِي, أذكركم. Remember me, so I in turn, Allah's glorified self, will in turn remember you. Dhikr, our prayer is dhikr, our fasting is dhikr, our hajj is dhikr, our tasbih is dhikr. In fact, every sadaqah is dhikr, every zakah is dhikr, every act of kindness is dhikr, every time you uphold justice is dhikr. Because our great scholars, like Ibn Taymiyyah for instance, says, الذكر إقامة خلافة الله على الأرض. That dhikr, the act of dhikr, is that you uphold the covenant that Allah set with you and put in place with you when you were created. Allah made us the khulafa fil ard, made us Allah's deputy on earth, because earth doesn't belong to us but belongs to Allah. And we are here to carry Allah's will and Allah's purpose on this earth. When we deal with anything, when we deal with time, when we deal with health, when we deal with nature, when we deal with family, when we deal with money, when we deal with family, we are dealing as agents on behalf of Allah فيما استخلفنا فيه, in what Allah has given us as a covenant, a trust. Imagine if anyone entrusts something to you and you know that that trust will have to be returned in due time, and you will have to answer to what you've done with this trust once it is turned back to the owner of the trust. This is our relationship with Allah. But it's not just what we do with nature or what we do towards the lives of others, but it is also what we do with time, what we do with our spouses, what we do with our children, what we do with our neighbors, what we do in everything. We are in a relationship of istikhlaf. We are in a covenantal relationship where we act as trustees on behalf of Allah. And what we will answer to in the final day is what we did with that trust. We will answer for our time, we will answer for our bodies, we will answer for our family relations, we will answer for even as much as a ba'udah, as much as an insect that you might have killed. We will answer for all. I trust that you know that in Islam, if you as much as kill an ant, before Allah, in the final day, you will have to account whether you had to kill the ant or there was another means to deal with Allah's creatures. This is the true relationship of a Muslim. A Muslim, the Islam, when we translate a submission incompletely and imperfectly, but Islam is fundamentally a turnover of a trust in which we relate to Allah, understanding that everything we have and everything we deal with is on behalf of Allah and for Allah. The Prophet ﷺ set us a perfect example of what an exemplary trustee would do with this trust. That's why we study the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Because from the Prophet ﷺ we see how a perfect trustee dealt with that divine trust that Allah gave us. So Allah then gave us a key and said, if you want to be rightly guided, if you want to be rightly guided through your journey on this earth, your key is dhikr. Dhikr we translate as remembrance. But as I said, dhikr is everything you engage in if the intent inside of you is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if I say Salamu Alaikum, and I say Salamu Alaikum muhabbatan fillah, out of love for the sake of Allah, that's a form of dhikr. Dhikr is not just a sibha. It's not just saying Subhanallah, bihamdik, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. It's not just tasbih. And it's not just reading Quran. But it is everything that you do when Allah is at the forefront of your mind and your attention. Even an act of kindness that you show your child or your spouse, if you do it with the purpose of pleasing Allah, it is a form of dhikr. Now what happens if you turn away from dhikr? If you do what you do for promotions, for glory, for prestige, for prominence, for power, all the different things that motivate human beings to act, what happens if you do what you do not because you wish to glorify Allah and not because you wish to uphold your covenant with an Ali al-Azim, with the most glorified and high and mighty? What happens if you forget that you are here on earth to achieve an objective, a purpose, and that you will be held to a full accounting at the end of your journey? Although we don't often think about this, but when we talk about the process of Irtiqa, of spiritual elevation, we must visualize it. نُقَيِّدُ لَهُ شَيْطَانًا فَهُوَ لَهُ قَرِينٌ. Allah promises you that Allah will remove the protections that guard you from shayateen al-ins wal jinn. Shaitan is a demon. Is a demon. And demons are not just of the supernatural kind, but they are both human and non-human. They are both jinn and human. Shaitan al-ins wal jinn. Now let me take you a step further. Should we think seriously that when Allah tells us, if you do not uphold my dhikr, your companion in existence will be nothing but the demonic? Because that's what Allah promises us. Absolutely, in every concrete sense. In fact, the nature of our existence, brothers and sisters, it is like this. Remember the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that reminds us that salah is as if a form of washing that we do at a river's bank. We all grow up with this hadith, that if you pray 5 times a day, it's as if you go and you wash at a river's bank. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ tells us that there is a blackness that afflicts the heart. There is only one way to wash away that blackness, that grime that accumulates on the heart, and that is through dhikr, dhikrullah. Put it this way, and here I borrow from Imam al-Jilani's imagery. The nature of existence, if you leave something without cleaning it, what happens to it? It gets dirty, right? In order to keep something clean, you have to consistently wash it. If something stops moving in physics, what happens to it? Atrophies. And what happens after atrophy? Decay. The nature of creation is that cleanliness requires action. Cleanliness requires action. Non-action is equal to death, atrophy, and decay. Non-action is equal to death, atrophy, and decay. Similarly, if left to its own devices, your heart create the image in your mind. If left without the active ingredient of dhikr, your heart as if it blackens, decays. In order to give it that momentum of action, the momentum of harakiyah, that momentum is dhikr. And dhikr is what keeps the heart actively clean. It's like someone doesn't shower, eventually they'll stink. And eventually they'll get skin diseases. That the laws of Allah's creation are same. It's like the great A'imma said, you want to understand Allah's secret inside of you, observe Allah's secrets around of you. The law of creation is the same without and within. Allah has taught us that in order to keep up, in order to preserve ourselves from evil, we consistently need to solicit the aid and support of Allah. If left to our own devices, we are left to a process of atrophy and decay, the equivalent of non-action. The state of inaction will be filled by the demonic in the human element and the demonic in the non-human element. Do I believe that those who do not do dhikr and Allah is not at the forefront of their intention and purpose, do they become eventually accompanied by actual demonic jinn? Listen, I am a law professor, I am steeped in rationality, and I will tell you I absolutely believe it. My experiences in life has shown me that it is a concrete, explicit reality, not figurative. Do I believe that unless you actively seek al-hadra al-ilahiyya, unless you actively seek the divine presence, that you will attract demonic human beings? Absolutely. Unless you actively stay with Allah, you will find every human scoundrel who does not know Allah attracted to you. And if you attract the worst of humankind, it is only in due time that you become influenced by them and atrophy further and decay further. This is why when Allah gives us the most decisive advice, the most powerful and poignant advice, Allah tells us, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اذكروا الله ذكرا كثيرا وسبحوه بكرة وأصيلا. You believers, those of you who believe, who say you believe, who really want to believe, don't make your dhikr occasional. Don't make your dhikr on special occasions. Ramadan, I do extra prayers. Laylatul Qadr, I do extra prayers. No, make your dhikr bukratan wa asila means consistent, daily, night, day and night, a consistent process of engaging with the divine that you are from and to who you will return. One of the teachers that I respected the most in my life, Sheikh Adam Eid rahimahullah, I once asked him, I said, Sheikh, I read intellectually about, I read people like Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyya, Hadi al-Arwah. I read Ibn al-Qayyim's work on al-Rawh. I read even someone like Ibn Arabi or Ibn Farid, his beautiful mystic poetry. I read al-Jilani, but I don't feel it. When I pray, I have the hardest time concentrating. He told me something I'll never forget. He said, Khaled, you have not believed in your death. Visualize yourself in your grave. Visualize yourself in your grave. You and I know intellectually that we will die. You and I know intellectually that eventually there will be all types of insects crawling all over our bodies. Thank you. You and I know intellectually that we will decay. Visualize that moment of absolute loneliness when you are in your qabr, in your grave, confronting nothing but the account of your deeds. Now, every time you pray and you start thinking of your bills or your problems with your spouse or the problems your kids are, the headaches they're creating for you, visualize your body decaying in the grave. I did it. And I did it so consistently and so persistently until it became second nature. Until I got sick of imagining my decaying body in the grave. And when you visualize your decaying body in the grave often enough, you finally, and I'll borrow from Jilani's imagery, you will finally see beyond your body to the truth of who you are, and that's ar-rawh, the spirit inside of you. وَنَفَخْنَا فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِنَا. Allah tells you, and we blew into Adam from Allah's breath. That's what dwells inside of you. And what is from Allah is absolutely beautiful and beatific. And it is so beautiful that you feel ashamed to degrade it, or to sully it, or to dirty it. When Allah talks about our spirit, what is the most often thing that Allah tells us as the greatest blessing that would come our spirit? Nur, light. When you are able to see beyond your body to the truth of your spirit, you feel it is too beautiful to sully with anything that will cause Allah's displeasure. Here's another key. The Prophet ﷺ told us, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. You do not truly believe until you love for your brothers and for your sisters what you would love for yourself. Allah tells us, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. Those who believe are the most fervent in loving Allah. Your goal is to understand your Maker to the point that you obey your Maker not out of fear but out of love. But that blessed state will not be reached until you discipline the ego inside of you that is like a spoiled child that always says, me first, me first, me first. If you want to walk the path of Irtiqa, start out by preferring others, preferring the interest and the convenience and the comfort of others over yourself. Deny yourself to put forward your Muslim brothers and sisters. Think of the welfare, started out even with your own family. If you have always been insensitive with your spouse, force yourself to be sensitive. If you're not a very good listener, force yourself to be a good listener. If you're a person who's short-tempered and your family is always complaining about how quickly you lose your temper and your patience, force yourself to be patient. Force yourself to think of others. If you force yourself to think of others, you walk the first steps on the path of Irtiqa. You walk on the first steps on the path of discharging the covenant, the truth of the covenant of istikhlaf, of your agency on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember, you do not really believe until you love for your brothers and sisters what you would love for yourself. Unless you learn to put yourself in the shoes of others, you will not gain even the beginnings of understanding. And in order to put yourself in the shoes of others, you must first discipline that ego, that spoiled child that always tells you, me first, me first. I want, I want, I want. As Ibn Taymiyyah says, عدو الإنسان الأنا. The enemy of humankind is me, the I. Our Islam, brothers and sisters, have been built on the shoulders of great scholars who have lent us a great amount of insight. You want to see what happens when Muslims forget how to love each other and put each other first, and as a result, they don't even understand the relationship of being khulafa on behalf of Allah, of being deputies on behalf of Allah on this earth. Look at the modern Muslim world. In Libya, there's suffering. In Yemen, there's suffering. In Syria, there is suffering and suffering. In Egypt, there's suffering. In Sudan, there is suffering. In Burma, there is enormous amount of suffering. In China, Muslims are packed up in concentration camps. This type of demonic state should be a reminder for all of us that we urgently need dhikrullah in our midst. We urgently need to rebuild our Islam and our faith from the ground up so that the barakah, the blessing, and the love of Allah will be bestowed on us again. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Allah bless you.